friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be going through all the books that I read this summer. So this is not the full stack of them. Some of them I read on Kindle or on Libby, and so I don't have the physical copies of that. But just wanted to get them out. We're going to go through my thoughts on them, what I rated them, and if I recommend that you read them or not. I will also preface this by saying the books that I read throughout the summer pretty much cross all genres, so you should be able to find something that you like in here. I'm just going to be going straight through my Goodreads list from at the beginning of the summer to the end. We just officially ended summer on September 21st last weekend, and so I just wanted to wrap up all the summer books with a little book review, and we can just chat about what I'm reading right now. So if you want to friend me on Goodreads, I'll have my account linked below where I'll have the reviews. I don't do a full review for every book, but I'm just pulling my Goodreads up right now so that I can see everything that I've read in the order that I read it. Also on Goodreads, I have my reading challenge for the year, which was to read 52 books, and I'm 2 books ahead of schedule right now, which is great because that means I can kind of slow down, but usually I'm reading multiple books at once, so it just really depends on when those books wrap up, how fast I'm reading them. So right now I'm at 40 books for the year out of 52, but for the summer, the first book that I finished at the beginning of the summer was the second Ranger's Apprentice book. It's called The Burning Bridge. I'll put the cover up right here. And I gave that 4 stars at the end of it. I actually finished it on my birthday. My husband really loves this book series, and so he wanted me to read it really badly. So I picked a couple of them. I think I only read 2 of the series before deciding not to continue. It's not that this series is bad, it's just not necessarily my style. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. Laptop. So even though I didn't decide to continue the series, I did give this one 4 stars because it was entertaining, it was action-packed, it definitely felt more like a boys series, and I did enjoy it, but it's not my favorite series, so I did not continue in it. There's like a ton of books, so I just didn't feel ready to dive into that universe. After I finished The Ranger's Apprentice, we actually read 2 books at the same time for our book club. So we read Funny Story, and then we also read Where the Crawdads Sing. Now I did have that physical copy of Funny Story, but we'll talk about why I don't have that anymore in just a second. So Funny Story I actually finished before Where the Crawdads Sing, but Funny Story is a rom-com. I haven't read like a rom-com or just a only romance book in a really long time. I read that and I gave that 3 stars because I felt really not strongly about anything in the book. It was entertaining and held my attention, but I just didn't feel strongly about the characters or about the book itself. I unfortunately purchased it hardcover because it had just come out when we decided to read it at Barnes & Noble for more money than I wish that I had paid for. I wish I hadn't bought it. So I gave it to one of my other friends who wanted to read it. Just didn't love that. So I think I need to retry a rom-com or a romance book again later because that kind of put me off. Okay, so both Funny Story and Where the Crawdads Sing we read in June for our book club, and I really enjoyed Where the Crawdads Sing a lot more than Funny Story, so I gave Where the Crawdads Sing 4 stars. I had seen the movie before I watched the book. Wow. Do I know how to speak? I did watch the movie before I read the book a while ago with my sister-in-law, and I liked the movie. I was very shocked at the end. I will not spoil anything. So I knew going into the book what happened, but I just wanted to see how it was different from the movie. It was really good, very poetic, very beautiful language. The scenery is beautiful. She just really makes you immersed into the environment that Kaya's living in. And it is a little bit of a mystery, so if you don't know what happens at the end, there's a mystery that they're trying to solve in the book, and it also is showing flashbacks of her growing up, essentially. So this is kind of like, I would describe this book as a mix between like a mystery and like a fictional memoir type feel, because it is, again, like I said, like going back through her life. So very entertaining. Really like that. Next book that I finished this summer was The Meaning of Marriage by Timothy Keller. This book actually took me forever. Let's see when I started it. I was reading it for a very long time. At least I felt like. But I started reading it in the middle of March and I didn't finish it till July 4th, which doesn't sound like very long, but that's really long for me. I finish books like very quickly in like a couple weeks max. And that's if I'm like taking my time, which usually I don't. This is definitely one of those books. It's not like you can just read it before bed. It takes a lot of thinking. But Timothy Keller was a pastor in New York and he wrote this book, and it's literally all about marriage and what the Bible has to say about that. I think maybe if I haven't read a bunch of other books about marriage, I would have been more engaged in this, but because I've read other marriage books from a Christian perspective, a lot of it felt like repetitive from stuff that I'd already read, so I maybe didn't enjoy it as much. I can appreciate that Timothy Keller is a good writer, but I gave this one 3 stars, not because the book is bad, but just personally how much I enjoyed it. I was bored. but I just heard really good things about it, and there are really good things about it. I was really like struggling to get through it. After I finished The Meaning of Marriage, I actually read the Cruel Prince trilogy, which I also don't have any of those books. I bought the first one and the second one and read them like really quickly, and then after I finished the second one, I felt like I didn't want to actually physically have the books, so I returned them because I read them in like a couple days after I bought them. And then I read the last one. I liked the way that it ended, so now I kind of like, I would have that on my bookshelf, but alas, I do not have them with me. But anyway, starting from the top. The Cruel Prince, I gave 4 stars. I did enjoy it. I had high expectations, I think, because Haley Pham said that this is one of her favorite fantasy worlds. So I think I just had higher expectations for the way that I feel about some other fantasy worlds like Harry Potter or ACOTAR. And I liked the world, but it definitely was unique, which was a good thing because it was interesting, but unique in a way that maybe I just didn't feel as like drawn to or connected to. Again, I enjoyed the series, gave the first book 4 stars. The second one, reason why I'd returned my books, I actually gave it 3 stars because I really did not like how it ended. Yeah, the ending I did not enjoy. I will not spoil anything, but there's just some things that I'm like, people could just fix this if they talked about things, but I will say nothing else. The third book, again, I did come back and give that one 4 stars because I did like the way that it wrapped up. It's a very like political, it is like very fantasy, whimsical, but also serious, and it's such a funny like combo of themes in the books. Because the world is like kind of silly, like there's lots of silly magical things, but also like things are really serious and like political. And so both of those were just like an interesting combination. So I definitely think it's worth a read. I was glad to read that whole series. I do actually have there's another part of the series, not within the trilogy, but just in the same world. I think it's called The Stolen Heir, which I do have that saved on Libby just whenever it comes up. I'm not like dying to read it, but I do want to finish the whole series, I think. Probably as a whole, I'd give that series like 3.5 stars, which is good enough for me. Probably to read it again eventually, but I'm not like obsessed with it. Now, my first 5-star book of the summer is Howl's Moving Castle. If you have seen the movie, you need to read the book immediately. They're not they're the same story, but there's lots of details in it that are different, which I actually don't mind just because I love the movie so much. This is another book where I've watched the movie like many, many times before I ever read the book, and that's why I wanted to read the book. But I read this in like 2 days because it was so good. Howl's Moving Castle is like one of my most cozy comfort movies. I'm literally going to see it this Friday in the theater. So the book was just amazing. It was beautiful. It was actually like fun having things be different in there because it made it like new and a little bit like it's still the same world and the same main story, but there's lots of like little details that make it different. And so I really, really enjoyed it. They both just have a cozy feel to them. Anyways, I'm rambling too much. You just need to read this. It's so good. 5 stars. 5-star book number 2. It's kind of cheating because I've read it lots of times already. But I am reading through the Harry Potter series again with my friend, and I finished The Order of the Phoenix this summer. 5 stars. I think I've given every Harry Potter book 5 stars since I've been rereading them because they're just so good, and I read them like probably 6 times, each of the books like 6 times as a kid. I loved them so much. But reading them as an adult and like still loving them, rediscovering details that I forgot about because I've watched the movies but I haven't read the books in so long, is just so fun. And just being inside like Harry's mind and the different characters, just the different aspects that come out in the book. I just love it. It's so nostalgic. It's so good. If you've never read Harry Potter, even as an adult, you must. It's just magical and beautiful and everything good. And it's fall. Howl's Moving Castle, very cozy. Harry Potter, definitely fall vibes. So even though I read them in the summer, fall is the time. Okay, the next book we read for book club, I think this was our July book. Wait, no, was it August? So our August book club book was All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. I saw an Instagram reel about this where somebody was talking about this was the best book I read all year. The like summary they gave for it, I was very intrigued because it was like serial killer mystery, also romance, and cried at the end, like that kind of thing. I had an expectation for this book, and when we started reading it, it was so different in a good way from what I expected, because I think I was thinking like, oh my gosh, is the serial killer gonna end up being like the love interest? That's just kind of classic. Not to spoil, it's not a spoiler because it's in the first beginning of the book, but the serial killer is not the love interest, if that's the impression you got. This is a really good book. I've just really been in such a fiction zone until we started book club, and I've been forced to branch out a little bit in books maybe I wouldn't normally pick for myself because I really gravitate towards fiction and fantasy especially. This is fiction. It is a serial killer mystery. It's very deep. There's lots of things. There's a lot of plot twists. The chapters are really short. Like at the beginning, the chapters are like 2 pages, 3 pages. So that made it very easy and quick. I will say when I was reading this, I did feel a little bit anxiety about it, so I had to read it really fast. Just sometimes in books that are kind of either scary or there's just like really stressful things going on in the books, I actually get stressed out in real life, so I have to read them really fast because I just need to get to the end and wrap it up. So I did like this book. I gave it 4 stars. Again, like I said, totally different than what I expected. So if you're looking for like a mystery that just like keeps you guessing, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily like really scary. There's just like so many things that kind of put you on edge. So don't be like worried about the serial killer thing. Like, yes, it's a serial killer. Some parts that are a little scarier. It was just more like the stressful circumstances that made me like want to read it faster. Most people in our book club enjoyed this book, so I do recommend. After I finished that for book club, I read Jaybird Crow, which you would have just seen me talking about in my last video. I was in the middle of reading it when I was filming my last video, but I did finish it. This is 100% a literary fiction. I've never read a Wendell Berry book. My husband got me this because he'd heard good things, and there's faith elements, so he's been trying to help me find some more books that are some sort of influence or emphasis on Christian faith. So this was really good because the main character is basically like a memoir, fictional memoir, where he's like looking back through his whole entire life and noting the big moments that essentially like changed him. So it's told from the perspective like he's the narrator as an old man, and so like all the stories he's telling are like really normal. They're like really normal stories. It took me a while to really get into it just because it is very slow paced, and sometimes I can get bored in those kinds of books, but I'm really glad I stuck this out because by the end of it, really good. I gave this 4 stars as well. Usually I reserve my 5 stars for like, I would read this again pretty much immediately. This one was just like hefty. It's just a very like quaint and deep exploration of life experiences and how things change and how you change throughout time and the different things that happen in your life. And so really good. I would recommend this. The next book that I also was in my last video that I finished was Gods and Kings by Lynn Austin. And I mentioned that one of my friends got this for me, so they came and visited us last month and he bought it for me. And I read it. This one kind of took me a long time because I ended up giving it 2 stars. I have talked about it with him. He hasn't read it since he was younger, so he's like, I need to reread it and see. The reason I gave this 2 stars and would not really recommend is it sounds nice as a Christian because it's a fictional story, but the main points are like based on scripture, like a story in scripture. So this is about the life of Hezekiah, which was one of the kings in the Old Testament from the line of King David. And I kind of went in a little bit skeptical because it's always hard when you fictionalize something real. For me, it was really hard to separate in my mind what actually happened and what like in the fiction book is happening. And the dialogue in it, it hurt me. It hurt my soul. The way that they talked, I don't know, I was just like reading it, and for the time period that it's set in and the culture that they were living in, I'm like, I just do not think this is how these people were talking or acting. The main part of the story just is based on this person, but it's totally fictional and all this stuff is totally made up. Great. I just could not do that in my mind from like scripture, which is real and true and historical, and then like a fictional account of that. My brain just could not get over the things that I was like, I really don't know if that's how it happened. I don't know. I just had a hard time with it. So I would not really recommend it. Okay, the last 2 books that I read for the summer were the books in the Shepherd King duology. First one called One Dark Window. We actually read for book club. This was our book for this month actually. I read it so fast, so I've been done with it for a while, but I gave this 4.5 stars. I really liked it. This is probably one of the first new fantasy series that I've read that I felt like I really liked it. So I literally read this book maybe in like 2 days. It also is on Spotify. If you have Spotify Premium, the audiobook is on Spotify. So that is how I finished it quickly. I also was in the car a lot, so I could listen to it. The premise of this book is a girl. Basically, there are these cards that are magical. There's like this magical mist over the area that they live, and they need to bring all the cards together essentially to get rid of it. There's lots of issues. This is very surface level explanation of it, but basically this girl touches one of the cards, and when she does, she absorbs something from it, and so there's this voice that lives in her head now, and she calls him the Nightmare. So it goes through all of that, and them trying to basically save their kingdom and just all the different things that come with that. So there's romance, there's magic. It is considered a dark fantasy. I wouldn't say it's as dark maybe as, at least as I think when I think dark fantasy. It's not as bad as I imagined when I heard dark fantasy in terms of the darkness of it. So I read this and then immediately started reading the second book, Two Twisted Crowns. That one I gave 4 stars. I definitely like the first one better. The second one was really good. The way that it wraps up is good. Just lots of different moving parts in it and different character growth and relationships throughout the 2 books. It's not all just one person and one point of view. There are multiple points of view throughout the 2 books. So it just makes it interesting and good. And that's all the books that I read this summer. Keep up with me on Goodreads. Actually, let me grab the books that I'm reading right now. So these are the books that I'm reading right now. I'm reading 3 books at the moment. Usually I try to stick to 2, but one of them I've been going through more slowly. So this one I've been reading for a little bit. I've been kind of using it as like a devotional supplement because it is going through Psalm 23. And it is from the perspective of somebody who was a shepherd, just the way he breaks down, you know, the different metaphors used in the gospel, especially used in Psalm 23 about sheep and Christ being the shepherd. And it's been really good. So I have 50 pages of this left. I'm excited to finish it. So far I've been loving it. It just makes things really understandable and relatable. Right now I would recommend this to a lot of people. I'm also continuing in the Harry Potter series. I am about 2/3 of the way through the Half-Blood Prince, which very good. I'm trying to pace myself because again I'm reading this with somebody and she hasn't started the book yet. Ilya, come on, start the book. So we've been reading a book, watching the movie, reading a book, watching the movie. I'm just trying to slow down a little bit so she can catch up so that we can watch this movie this fall. But super good. I'm really excited to read the last book because growing up the last book was always my favorite, and so I'm just interested to see once I've read all the books in the series which one I'll look back and be like, is the last one still my favorite or is a different one my favorite now? And finally, I started the Silmarillion. I've had it on my bookshelf. I got it for my birthday. We have a bunch of friends from church who love Lord of the Rings, and I love Lord of the Rings, and I read them last year. We started watching the Rings of Power series, and so I felt like I should probably have more knowledge of what the actual historical stories of Lord of the Rings are. It is a lot. I actually can't believe that J.R. Tolkien did all this because it's actually crazy and beautiful. So I've only read, I'm literally 10 pages into this. This will be a slow going book. This is not going to be a read really fast book. There's lots of different photos in it. There's a giant map in the back, and I'm excited to read this and just expand my Lord of the Rings knowledge, you know. Okay, that's all the book stuff I have going on right now. I hope this was helpful. I hope you have books you want to read now. I hope you feel inspired to read. I love reading. It's really makes me feel more creative, gives me ideas. The things people can do with language is crazy and beautiful. So if you don't read, you should. Friend me on Goodreads and let's be book friends. Okay, I will see you in my next video. See you guys.